Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome to another Sunday night live stream. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, joined by Lifetime Longhorn CJ Vogel and the man, the myth, the legend, Jerry Hamilton, ladies and gentlemen. We got a lot to get into on the show. It's going to be jam-packed. These gentlemen are at SEC Media Days right now. That's where Jerry Hamilton is and CJ Vogel. So on Texas football team, have you covered everything when his in regards to SEC Media Days coming up all this week. Also, the roster has been released. We'll get to some of the updates and some of the news and nuggets from the Texas roster, and also big commitments coming up this week as well, right, gentlemen? You got Nick Townsen, the fantastic athlete. He's committing up this week, and also Kelshawn Johnson, a really talented wide receiver, committing this week as well. So we got a lot to get into. Of course, your questions, your comments, we'll get to as many of them as we can. So just throw them out there. Super chats always jump to the front of the line, so you can interrupt the show at any time. Promise you we'll try to get to those as fast as we can as soon as you throw them out. But first and foremost, how you doing, Jerry? What's going on, brother? How are you?
I'm great, man. Excited to be here for the Big 12 Media Days with CJ, Bobby Burton, myself.
The what?
Yeah.
The
Big 12 Media Days. Yeah. Sorry. SEC Media Days. What am I talking about?
Hey, no, Jerry, I did it earlier. I did it on my radio show this week. I kept saying it. You're not alone, brother.
Yeah, because I was just reading that FSU, Clemson to the Big 12, all that stuff. And, oh, by the way, on the TV behind me, I'm watching Florida State 1996, regular season finale at Tallahassee. FSU sacked Warfel 1,000 times. Then Florida came back and whooped them up 52-20 in the title game. All right, but SEC Media Days, I'm definitely not with Brett Yormark ever in life. So we're in Dallas, Bobby Burton, CJ, myself, Blake Monroe will be in, the whole team, John Burrows, all our guys, who does an unbelievable job of social media. So we're here. The setup looks great. CJ, everything's ready to roll. It's definitely a first. What's better than first class? Whatever that is, that's what SEC Media Days is. So we're excited to be there. We're on Radio Row for Coffee and Football and some other shows Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and part of Thursday. So we're excited about that. Obviously, some huge recruiting announcements coming up for the Longhorns here. Nick Townsen announces around 4 p.m. tomorrow. I call him 4-star plus, Rod. I mean, I think you've watched him before. CJ's watched him. He's one of the best players in the country. He's a top 50 kid in the country, tight end or at outside back or whichever one he wanted to play. Obviously, tight end's his first look. But we believe he's been trending to Texas over Texas A&M and Alabama and USC, and we'll see what he announces at 4 p.m. tomorrow. His teammate, Tanook Hines, also announces right after that tomorrow. USC, Notre Dame expected, probably USC expected over Notre Dame. Texas has been in contact with him. I'm not sure they've been all in. We'll see if that changes here in the last few hours here. And then Tuesday, Kelshawn Johnson, the 4-star receiver out of Hitchcock, will announce his decision around 5 p.m. That is A&M or Texas. Been trending to A&M for a while, but I'm here to tell you, him and his mom have talked to Steve Sarkeesian at least 4 or 5 times in the last 8 days. So could they come back from behind and win it? We'll find out Tuesday. Still about 48 hours to go on that one, 46 to be exact.
Nice stuff. CJ, what's top of mind for you, brother? You down there? You probably thinking about the video game coming out this week too. That's probably maybe that top of mind for you.
And I can't wait. I was watching, Quinn was playing Chad Ochocinco earlier today. Man, it looked like a good time. The game looks great. I'm excited for it. I'm ready to get down to Austin. First off, we're going to have a blast at SEC Media Days. Jerry, Bobby, the crew, I'm really excited for it. That first real welcoming, we had the celebration of the SEC. Now it's like a true SEC event that we get to witness Texas being a part of. Very excited for that. Very excited to meet the new media conglomerate, in the conference and get to see some new folks and friends. So that'll be a lot of fun. And then, of course, Rod, when we get back down to Austin, I'm unpacking the Xbox and we're getting ready to roll. We're going to get the game going.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right. So appreciate that, guys. And I wish I was down there with you guys. I got some stuff got to handle down here, but I'll be holding down the fort while y'all guys are working hard there at SEC Media Days. Of course, we'll answer some questions here. But I want to ask you guys, because I know we got a lot of folks who want to know, obviously, what you guys' thoughts are there at SEC Media Days. I just want to ask you, I'm curious, what's your first question for Sark? I know CJ. I always hear CJ's questions too, so I know CJ. But Jerry, if you were going to ask Sark a question, I want to know what's your first question for Sark that you'd have a chance to ask him.
is Cam Williams really 335? Roster update. I want to know. I want to know. Look, that guy's been 370, 360 for 2 years. Yeah. Rod, if he's 335, I know people might have different questions, but roster's on my mind. The new roster was just updated. Roster was released, which we're going to get into. But if he's 25 pounds lighter, that's significant for a guy who could be a one-and-done starter. That's a significant body change for Cam Williams, who's hovered in between 350 and 360 for much of his time at Texas. That would be significant. And then I'd also ask him, if Anthony Smith is really 220 pounds, how do you put 27 pounds on a guy in that short amount of time? I think I know the answer, but I mean, that's Rod. Think about being 193 to 220 since enrolling in January.
Yeah.
Which we'll get into, but obviously there's some better questions on the team. But we'd also ask Sark what went into his shoe choice, whatever that is.
The kids love the shoes, man. What about you, CJ?
Yeah, I want to know. I didn't get the chance to ask Quinn when I was down in for the Manning Passing Academy in Louisiana. I didn't get to ask him about the red zone and kind of the improvement expected for this upcoming season, right? We've talked about it all offseason. It was the hottest topic in the chat for us, social media, whatever. You know, that can Texas cash in inside the 20-yard line? And right now, again, I think you have some really talented pieces. You return all your offensive line. Quinn's back. The formula is there for Texas to score more touchdowns in 2024 than they did in 2023. What's that mean for Sarkeesian? What changed philosophically, if anything, during this offseason? What have they been kind of hinting at or looking in? Have they taken a deep dive into why they didn't score in the red zone? I want to pick his brain a little bit, see if he'll open up a little bit in terms of what he saw or what he expects from this unit in the red zone in 2024.
Hey, Ron, I got a question for you.
Throw it out there, brother.
What would be the first question you'd ask Kirby Smart?
Oh,
would you ask him about 23 arrests?
Man, that's good. Can
or
I say
speeding tickets, whatever we're calling it.
How long? Yeah, man. How many of these issues have we had just this offseason? Have they had a couple guys getting in trouble? And we go obviously going back to a couple offseasons ago where they had the speed racing incident where you had the player that was obviously the draft, what was his name? The draft pick.
Yeah,
the hit and run thing, and then left the scene of an accident. So they've had some issues. I'll just say this: when you are a dominant kind of dynasty like Georgia's been, man, when you've been on top for so long, it's easy for people to see your flaws after a long period of time like that. And they've been on top for what now? We're talking about probably a 4 or 5 year run they're going on and being one of the best programs, if not the best program in college football. So I think now we're just starting to see the flaws. You can only hide that. You can only disguise that for so long. And I don't think it's an indictment on Kirby Smart and this program. I just think it's only that there's only so long where you can kind of keep all that together and then keep that culture from eventually starting to unravel somewhat. Look at the Kansas City Chiefs right now. Seriously, that's a dynasty, right? How many offseason issues have the Kansas City Chiefs had just randomly? Just random stuff, whether it be guys getting arrested, Xavier Worthy had his car stolen, like Patrick Mahomes' daddy, like it's just random stuff because it's an organization built of humans. Humans are obviously we're frail and we're not perfect, we're imperfect, and over a long period of time, being that great, I think ultimately you just start to see the fragility of it all. So all dynasties, look at they're down. Every dynasty, you start to see flaws over time like that.
The question is, how would you frame the question, Rod? Would you say, Coach Smart, this seems like it's the fastest team you've ever had? Would you expound on that?
No, see, I don't have the scones to ask something like that to Kirby Smart. I probably would ask him something technical about, hey, I've seen you use the 3 high safety defense a few times. Is that something that's becoming more prevalent in the SEC? Do you see it being more of a staple of your defense? Something like that. I'd probably stay up. Yeah, Jerry, I'm gonna let you stick with this salacious stuff. Stay away from that.
One thing we know for sure about that is they certainly cannot adopt the phrase "all gas, no brakes." That's for sure.
See,
They be living that.
They ran FSU off the field last year. That's for sure.
Keep them coming. Keep them coming. All right, Kabir, let's get back to it. Kabir Hussein, thank you very much for the super chat. We appreciate that, brother. Does a class not in the top 10 affect Sark's trajectory of the program? Can the transfer portal offset at the end? Gentlemen?
Yeah, so thank you for the super chat, by the way. Texas is going to sign a top 10 class. I'll be extremely surprised if that's not the case. The question is, are they going to get in that top 5, 6, 7, 4, 5, 6, 7 neighborhood at the end of the day? We'll see. Got to remember, last year at this time, there was no Brandon Baker, Kobe Black, Ryan Wingo committed, Phil Sami didn't have an offer, Aaron Butler didn't have an offer, Ty Anthony Smith was committing to Texas A&M. So a lot can happen between early August and the start of the season. But the crazy thing about class rankings, now it's different class rankings in filling needs. I'm here to tell you, if Nick Townsen were to go Texas way tomorrow, and Jamie French goes Texas way, and Nick Brooks goes Texas way, and a couple other 4-star guys go Texas way, they're going to be sitting there with the number 7 or 8 class in the country. But did they fill all their needs? They got some work to do at D-line, possibly defensive back. I'm waiting to hear back from Aiden Anding to see if he's going to cancel that LSU visit at the end of July or if he's going to keep on with that. I haven't heard from him today on that. But there's some things in play for Texas, and they're not far off. Trajectory program, no. Look, the only thing, guys, that can hurt the trajectory of the program right now would be a 7-5 type of season. And just a complete fallback type of season. Nothing went your way. Players regressed. Some things happened. Maybe some guys said, heck with it, I'm done. Maybe you had a slew of injuries. Just had a bad season. If Sark goes on and they can manage a 10-2 regular season, I'm not saying you can't do better. If you beat Michigan, more's on the table. But say you navigate a 10-2 season somehow, it's going to be a tough winding road. And you get to the college football playoff. I don't care if you sign the number 8 or 11 ranked class or 4 ranked class. It's not going to change your trajectory.
Yep. Good stuff. All right, getting back to it. Jeff, thank you for the super chat, Jeff. We appreciate that. Love you guys. 1 through 12 in the playoffs. Where do you have Texas? And what's Texas' record? Who they beat, wins, and what are the losses? I'm going to throw it out to you, CJ. What are your thoughts on Texas in the playoffs, 1 through 12? Where do you have them? And what's their record? Who are the wins? Who are the losses?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jeff. I love you too, brother. I don't know. I see Texas losing 2 games. I just do. I think, again, it's more challenging this year than it was in years past. And even last year with a really talented team, with a coaching staff that took steps forward in every aspect of the game, you were still very close against Houston, TCU, Iowa State, a number of programs in which talent-wise you probably shouldn't have. And so going into the SEC, I'd still think that you're a very talented team. I think that depth-wise, it's probably the deepest team you've seen Texas field in quite some time. Yep, you're going against more talented teams, right? It's just the nature of the SEC. That Oklahoma-Georgia back-to-back is a game in which I see Texas falling in at least one, right? That's just very difficult to go out and get up for both games, right, in back-to-back weekends. So I see at least one there, and then I just think at some point, the remainder of the season, whether it be before or after, I think Texas falls again at some point. I see 10-2, but I see them kind of falling into that 5, 6, 7 range in the playoff seeding. I think, of course, to win the SEC, you're a top 4 lock. Georgia's pretty good. We'll see what happens. But right now, anywhere from 5 to 7, maybe 8, I feel comfortable saying that's where I see Texas finishing in the playoff picture going into the postseason.
As long as those 2 losses aren't A&M and Oklahoma.
That'll be crazy.
Yes, you can lose to one of the 2. You just can't let both of your 2 losses, because I agree with CJ, it's 10-2. They both can't be A&M and Oklahoma. That, don't you agree, Jerry? Now, that actually may have some kind of negative effect and blowback.
Yep. No, I totally agree. But here's the way I'm looking at this season. Alabama set the tone last year, right? Once Texas beat Alabama, it was like, okay, all bets are off. We're all thinking 10 wins. Okay, this can be 11 wins, right? You didn't know whether a loss would come to Oklahoma or you get upset or something like that. The Michigan game is huge for Texas. In this way. If they win that game, they have a 2-game cushion to still make the playoff. If you lose that game, your cushion is almost gone to guarantee you make a playoff.
True that.
So if you drop the Michigan game, you pretty much have to run the whole SEC schedule with 1 loss. Now, it's a favorable SEC schedule, but still, that's Oklahoma neutral, Georgia at home, Florida will be a pretty good team. I don't know what they'll look like by the time they come to Austin, at A&M, right? I mean, could you trip up against the Kentucky if you don't bring your A game, turn the ball over or something? That Michigan game looms extremely large in a 12-team playoff, because in a 16-team playoff, I think a 3-loss Texas team on this schedule gets into a playoff.
Yeah.
But I think 10-2 to feel comfortable being in the playoffs. So that Michigan game is huge. Where Texas will finish right now, and I don't know. I would think in that 5, 7, 8 range. Now, I was joking earlier about Georgia, Kirby Smart, just having a little fun with it. But I'm here to tell you, man, I talked to somebody. They think this is the best offensive line Georgia's ever had under Kirby Smart. And they think the outside skill play on offense as a whole is the best it's been under Kirby Smart.
Wow.
If both those things end up being true, Georgia's going to have one hell of a team.
And you might have the best quarterback he's had, right?
Well, if they stay out of trouble.
Yeah.
If they stay, but they so damn deep. Actually, a couple of guys could get suspended. They still might be all right. That is true. They do have the interior O line though is elite. I mean, they got they got a couple of guys, NFL guys. There's no doubt about it. But man, that's a scary.
I was actually told 7 guys on that offensive line.
Wow.
Georgia thinks will play 6, 8, 10 years in the NFL.
Wow.
Wow.
If that ends up being true, that's a hell of a team.
That's scary if that is the truth. All right. Let's get to, you know what, before we get to some questions, because thank you guys for the super chats. Really appreciate that. And yes, we'll get to the guys' thoughts on the roster update from Texas football and some recruiting nuggets as well. And I think CJ actually wants to give you guys a couple of baseball nuggets toward the end of the live stream here. Let's thank our fantastic sponsor for our Sunday night live stream. So I'm going to throw it to Jerry to tell you about Joe Brown.
Joe Brown. Bobby Burton's first mortgage as an adult. Joe Brown was that guy. Like the recruiting business, the mortgage industry has a star rating system, and Joe Brown is a 5-star plus, we'll call him. He has more than 3 decades of experience helping over 4,000 families to finance homes and investment properties. Joe's a lifetime Longhorn fan with 2 degrees from the University of Texas and helped many former UT athletes and UT professors with their real estate financing. And Southside Bank has been based in Texas for more than 60 years, but can also do mortgage loans in other states. So that means you should definitely call Joe Brown at 512-663-4744 if you're looking for a mortgage or loan. That's 512-663-4744. Joe Brown. Thank you very much for being a sponsor of Longhorn Livestream.
Thank you very much to Joe Brown. Thank you, Jerry, for a great read there. And thank you for Joe Brown for sponsoring our Sunday live stream. All right, let's get to some roster conversation here. I think E. Kim's question is the perfect one to start us off. E. Kim wants to know, what was the most surprising thing or things from the updated 2024 football roster? I'm going to throw it to you, CJ, first. What was the most surprising thing about looking at the new updated roster?
It has to be the right side of the offensive line. I mean, the weight changes, not just in terms of how much it was, but, the direction. It's a positive direction right there. Cam Williams dropping 34 pounds from this time a year ago down to 335. Massive. DJ Campbell, we saw him at the pro day, Jerry. He looked like he was about the mid 320s, about 20 pounds less from where he was this time last year. He's up to 330. That's exactly where I think you should be playing DJ Campbell at right now. Cam Williams at 335, Jerry. You'll talk about this here in a sec. That's tremendous for the overall ceiling that he could potentially have as your right tackle at the University of Texas. For that right side to be as nimble and still in the 330s for those 2 guys, really, really impressive. Though that's the biggest, kind of takeaway I had by a mile.
Mine were some of the freshmen, because seeing these guys in high school, and then seeing their listed weight in July is always interesting. So Ryan Wingo's all man, 6'2", 210. We've talked about him plenty. Colin Simmons listed at 245, up to 245. That dog will hunt at 245. Zena Umeozulu up to 260. Now, Smith Orogbo, he referenced this coming out of his official visit when we talked to him at On Texas Football, that Zena said he was 235 when he reported to Texas in January, up to 260 now. Xavier Filsaime, 6'1", 200 pounds, up about 10, 12 pounds. But Ty Anthony Smith is crazy, man. 6'1", 220. I mean, he's 193 pounds. I think he was 191 when I was through Jasper before the season. So that's a massive number for him. Wardell Mack listed at 190. Telling you, he was low 170s to 175 when I was through there last year. So he's put on really good weight. Melvin Hills, 6'3", 305. Yeah. I mean, this is a guy 275 at the start of his senior season. He told us when he was on the show with us, guys, he was about 295 before he reported to Texas, so 10 pounds there. CJ, we both commented at the spring game when Nate Kibble walked by us that he looked really good physically, 6'3", 320. Brandon Baker, 315. He was about 285, 290 his senior season. So Jordan Washington, 250. I saw a picture of Alex January recently, and he looks really good at 310, 315. I mean, that freshman class, for these guys that when they get to college, especially the early enrollees, you know, you call it eating three scores. It's a nutritional program, strength and conditioning program. If there's multi-sport athletes and then they come into a college football program such as Texas or a blue blood program with a great strength and condition and nutrition program, and they go football focused, it's amazing how quickly, Rod, these guys can put on stack some weight and put on some armor, as you call it, for some of these guys.
There one more I wanted to mention in terms of maybe reshaping his body a little bit. Trey Owens, Jerry, 238 at the All-American Bowl, 220 on this roster update. So that was one of the two names I'd heard over the last week and a half in terms of guys kind of buying in fully to the summer conditioning. The first was Trey Owens, and the way in which he's completely reshaped his body out of high school to now. Again, we don't know how much we'll see him this year, but hey, from 238 to 220, that's pretty impressive. And the other name was obviously Nate Kibble, and Jerry, you mentioned that 320 coming in. He looked mighty impressive at the spring game, and I was talking to somebody in the program the other day, and they were certainly saying he's impressed a lot since he's shown up in the summer. I've been really impressed by what I've heard from him. And again, I think that's a really good weight for him. Yeah, no doubt. And Stephen Houston has a comment, and this is Ty Anthony was a small town kid that's never been a college weight program. He had the frame to put on the weight fast like those rural Florida and Louisiana kids. Absolutely. Jasper High kid, multiple sport athlete, 193-ish pounds at the Adidas game. Very similar to kids like that. I think Stephen Houston hit that on the head. Kobe Black at 200 too. Big one.
Yeah, down about 10 pounds.
Yeah.
I like that. All right. Good stuff there, guys. Scott, thank you for the super chat. We really appreciate that. Scott M., we appreciate you. Isaiah Coleman is rarely mentioned due to being a preferred walk-on, but given he had decent offers, does he have the potential to be a contributor at Texas? Thoughts, gentlemen?
You never want to rule out a guy that has a motor and has a big heart, right? I mean, so Maurice Gordon played at what, 275, 280, Rod?
Yeah, he was light, man.
So times have changed in football, right? There's more large humans, I think, across the board in football. But Isaiah Coleman, if you're going to play 6 defensive linemen in a rotation, I think if he continues on the path he's on, if he can get up to 290, 295 over time, I'm not counting out a guy that has a motor and a big old heart, especially a chip on his shoulder with his brother being full scholarship athletes, him being a preferred walk-on. I think it's going to mean something for him to get on the field at some point in his career. And it wouldn't shock me if he's not in a 6-man rotation at some point. He loves football.
Thank you for the super chat, Scott. Really appreciate that. Football Junkies got a good one. Heard you guys talking about this earlier. Sadir, 350 in new roster update. Hopefully, by mid-year, he could contribute. Thoughts
350.
350? Are we
buying or selling that? I think that's the question.
He seems to fluctuate 20 pounds in a week. That's very odd.
He loads up his Chipotle bowl, Jerry.
Yeah.
Hey, if it truly is 350, that's great for Texas. I'll believe it when I see it, I guess. But to the point, I do think he will contribute to Texas. I think even at the weight that he was playing in the spring game left me, pretty optimistic about what he could put on the film or put on tape for the fall this upcoming season. He had a good spring game. He moves relatively well for that size. He can move certainly a little bit better if he slims down as well. But I think he'll be a part of that rotation at some point in this year. Texas just will need those bodies. And at that size, hard to say no.
And here's my thing. You never know when the light's going to come on for these guys. With Sadir, you hope it is this season. And I'm not saying how many snaps he plays, but just the talent maximization part really kicks in with him because this is a guy, somebody said it in the chat, that Georgia and Texas battled to the bitter end for, right? I mean, they battled. Georgia kept coming back, battling for Sadir Mitchell. You don't do that for a player that you don't think has incredibly high ceiling, but it's up to Sadir to go chase it at the end of the day. Somebody asked, because I didn't finish the comment on Isaiah Coleman, what were his offers? SMU, Tulsa, UTSA. He had offers like that, which, you know what? Good offers. I mean, for a player that's arguably an undersized defensive lineman at 6'2", 270, 275. So he's a legitimate football player and a legitimate Power 5 prospect.
All right. Good stuff there, guys. All right. Getting back to let's get to El Conquistador. Wants to know, are you about to announce any good news? I don't know. I guess they want to see some of those here.
Well, for El Conquistador, Jerry, I think this means Colombia hoists the Copa America Cup trophy. We'll see. I saw his comment earlier. We'll see if that game's actually played. I saw that they stormed the barricades. There's thousands of fans running into the Hard Rock Stadium right now. So we'll see if that game's played. But good news, Jerry. What do we got?
Yeah, I will see. I mean, big announcement tomorrow for Texas. Nick Townsen. We've kind of been over that. Sorry, real quick, too, because I keep forgetting. Somebody asked about Andrew Marsh. I don't think Texas is going there with Andrew Marsh. I think your top 3 receivers right now for Texas are Jamie French, Khalil Lockett, and Kelshawn Johnson. And that's not to say Tanook Hines couldn't up and commit to Texas tomorrow, but I'm not sure we see that right now. Nick Townsen, I think, is a huge recruitment, guys. Rod, you've watched Nick Townsen.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on Nick Townsen as a player? We watched his video together, and that was the first time you'd ever watched it. I think you were a little taken aback at how physical he was for a guy that's being recruited as a tight end on defense.
Yeah, I think that'll help his transition to play tight end full time too, because he seems to be, like, in my opinion, he seems to be comfortable with the physicality, that linebacker position, right? It seems like that's not something that's going to be a challenge for him at the tight end position. If we in line at times and have to block physically in the run game, something that he may actually enjoy, something that he may take some pride in, considering the way he played linebacker. But aside from that, I mean, this guy could be a 5-tool tight end for you. I mean, that's really even the same things that a guy like JT Sanders brought to the table. He could potentially bring all that and add speed, like straight line speed, which game-breaking speed, which JT Sanders was awesome, great athlete, but he didn't really have great game-breaking speed like that. And Nick Townsen has some of that. I mean, I've seen him leave some defenders in the dust. So, yeah, I can see why Sark is really excited about him potentially at tight end. I agree that's the position for him. He probably could play 3-4 different positions at the college level. Honestly, if he just different colleges and recruiting him at different positions, he probably could. But I think his ceiling is highest at tight end. I really do. Yeah.
We'll see what Nick Townsen decides tomorrow. We've had for the past since the end of the June visits, we felt like Texas was trending a little bit there over A&M, Alabama, and USC. We'll see what he announces at 4 p.m. tomorrow.
All right, there you go. All right, Justin, we appreciate the super chat. Justin Yarbrough throwing it out there. We appreciate you. Said we're only 2 weeks from fall camp starting. What are you almost looking forward to in the short media windows to watch? The board will be on fire at that time. You're right about that, Justin. Thank you for the super chat. We appreciate it. Yeah, guys, what are y'all most looking forward to in those short media windows? What are you going to be looking? CJ, I know you always find little nice nuggets and tidbits, looking at different drills that the guys are going through? What do you want me looking for, especially?
I know I will be walking in and headed straight to the defensive line. I think that we have a great understanding right now of what the offense will look like. I'll be headed straight to the D line, and then I guess my second look will be more at the wide receivers to see what that first rotation actually looks like. I think it might look a little different from practice 1 to game 1, but we'll certainly see there. I want to see what that rotation is like on the defensive line. Who are the big bodies that are moving well? I'll be really interested to see, of course, who's your true nose, who's manning that 3 tech, because you have a lot of bodies, a lot of experience, some guys expected to probably play a lot, and some returners who are looking at a chance to really kind of come out of their own shell and break through. So we'll see who those guys are, but that's probably where I'm headed immediately is Kenny Baker's squad. Let's see what you got.
I'm going very boring because it is a 15-minute window. And I should have been born in Australia because I want to see the punter, Michael Kern.
Wow, that is boring.
Yeah,
that is boring.
But it is boring, but is it the one position we kind of wonder about most right now?
It's true.
So, and specialists are going to carry a lot of the 15, 20-minute window we see. So I'm actually interested to see the freshman punter. Does he look like a guy that can come in and be the guy for you? Because Texas is planning on that with him. Not that Ian Ratliff, those guys aren't going to compete, but you lost a tremendous punter in Ryan Sanborn, and you didn't go to the portal. So you obviously have confidence in who you got on campus and your freshmen. And at some point, special teams are going to win or lose you a game. So I will be watching Michael Kern to see what he looks like early on at Texas.
I like that. I'd probably go to wide receivers. I'm a DB. I always want to watch them wide outs. I see the chemistry between Quinn and the wide receivers.
Yep.
Who's taking the first reps in those drills? Who's up? You know what I mean? Like, who's established themselves as, you know, the leaders of that group. You can kind of see that sometimes in those drills. So that's probably where I'd go. I'll probably start the wide receivers. Good question, though, Justin.
Hey, Rod, hey, I have a question for you. So Silas Bolden is listed at 5'8", 160, which means he's 157, by the way. So would you have bullied him, or would he too quick fast? Would you try to bully him up? Because you were a lot bigger than he was now, Rod.
Oh man, dude, in my freshman year when I was playing nickel, I was close to 200. I'm not joking. I was like at 197 when I was but I think about it, CJ, I was playing against Nebraska. It's the old Big 12. I got to play against teams still running triple option. I'm going against 21 personnel. Like I'm taking on fullbacks still, like actual fullbacks at times, playing the nickel back. So I had to beef up a little bit. That was the regimen they had me on. Kind of like they probably looked at Rod Beal and I was like, man, Rod Beal is beefed up because Bull Reese wanted me heavier for that nickel position. But man, you're right about that. I mean, it's one thing I probably would have, because I think my corner weight was 185, probably 183, somewhere around there. And these guys, because they're so damn fast and I can't let them get on top of me, I can't let them get separation, I would have tried to play bump and run sticky coverage with all of them. Because one thing I do know is if I get my hands on them at the line of scrimmage, I can reroute these guys. Like they're not going to brush it off like some big wide receiver. If I get a good punch on Xavier Worthy or Isaiah Bond or Silas Bolden, it's going to knock them off. And that, honestly, I need him. I don't need him to get a free release anyway. Those guys, a Sark receiver with a free release is a nightmare because those guys have so much speed. They'll eat up your cushion so fast. It doesn't even really do you any good to play so much off coverage unless you get in and out of your breaks really quickly. Because other than that, I'd be afraid of these guys creating so much separation on me. So I would play a lot of bump and run on these guys. I would, because I try to reroute them as much as I could. Now I wouldn't do it constantly because then they can adapt to it and Sark will have some freaky pre-snap motion and bunch formation and he'll pick you apart. But strategically, I would give my corners a lot of free reign to go up and press them because none of these guys are that big. Ryan Wingo is kind of your big receiver. The rest of he's the guy I think could on the line of scrimmage pretty much manhandle the corner trying to play bump and run. The rest of them I don't think have that ability. If you're a good bump and run corner, and we've seen a few, TCU had a couple back in the day. If you're a good bump and run corner, you can give Texas some issues. You can give their receivers some problems.
That was one of the things I noticed on the roster update. Only one wide receiver on scholarship, Ryan Wingo, is listed over 200 pounds. To your point, Rod, I mean, Texas Sarkeesian has that type of kind of those sleek, slender, very quick off the line wide receivers. We know about the speed, but when it comes to the body types as well, we've seen what he likes. That's the Jalen Waddles, that's the Devontae Smiths, the Xavier Worthies of the world. I think DeAndre Moore and Matthew Golden were 195, so mid 190s I would expect. But hey, only Ryan Wingo listed above 200 right now.
Okay, and you guys brought up a lot of like just body transformations at DB, at linebacker, D line, O line. You don't see many of those at wide receiver. Sark's like, leave my wide receivers alone.
That's right.
He's like Torrey Baker, leave my wide receivers alone.
Hey, by the way, so when we're discussing Michael Terry's recruitment, that's why Michael Terry's not going to play wide receiver at Texas. I mean, Michael Terry's going to be a 225, 230-pound guy.
Great point.
Yeah,
that's not the type of guy Sark's recruiting at wide receiver. Just for the people saying, why can't he play wide receiver at Texas? I'm not saying the guy can't play receiver. I don't think that's his best position, but just look at who Sark's recruiting.
Yeah, this is a great comment from Justin. Parker Livingston, 6'4", only 195. He left high school at 180, so that's 15 pounds going the positive way. Obviously not up to 200 yet, but the staff wanted him at around 190, 195 from the start of the season, and he got there. So credit to Parker Livingston.
Yeah, he got Trey Owens' Chick-fil-A debit card.
Yeah. Hey, I bet some good points on that card, man. No doubt. All right, let's get to these. We'll try to get through these pretty quickly. Thank you guys for all the questions. So we'll try to get some of these, as many of them as we can. All right, Donald wants to know, will Texas be using helmet radios this year? They're optional, the headset communications. I believe they will be using them. We just don't know much about defense yet. Defense, Sark was a little... I don't know. He seemed like he was a little iffy on it. They weren't necessarily sure, so it was less clarity on the defensive side of things. But offensively, they're definitely using headset communication. They were working with it already. So
yeah, I'm excited for it. I think that'll be Anthony Hill, right? They kind of mentioned it. They didn't practice it a whole lot in the spring. Anthony Hill mentioned that in one of his availabilities. He said, "Yeah, we haven't really used it in terms of game kind of live situations, who gets the call, how does that get communicated with the rest of the defense?" The offense obviously has. So we'll see, if it is Anthony Hill, if it's a David Benda, it's got to be someone that remains on the field, play after play after play. So I good money, smart money right now, I would say, is on Anthony Hill to be that guy.
Like that. Mikey Mike wants to know, if Texas struggles this year, where do you see the problem being? And also, what do you think will surprise a lot of Texas fans? All right, so things go bad. He wants us to predict how they go bad. D-line is not what you thought it was going to be. The guys you brought in via the transfer portal are not necessarily capable of having the impact that you had last year. That could easily be it.
It'll be run defense and turnovers on the offensive side of the ball. And Quinn, I think, will be, again, very safe, very, I don't want to say cautious, but he's smart with the football. What kind of hurt Texas against Washington, and even some before, fumbles, loose balls from the running backs. That was, I think, a very quiet issue that was brought to light and kind of shown a little bit against that Washington game, but it was quickly hidden under the rug because of the red zone issues at the end. That was the big blame that everybody pointed to when the game ended and said, red zone. Funny how it ends there, right? Well, you had a fumble in your own red zone, and you had a fumble going into the red zone, which that's a 14-point swing potentially. That was an issue for me later on. I think C.J. Baxter did a better job as the season progressed. Jaden Blue was put in the doghouse a little bit at one point for fumbling against Wyoming in the kind of the third quarter mop-up duty early in that season. We didn't see him for about 4 weeks after that. So that could be a little bit of an issue that I'm keeping an eye on. We'll see if that continues moving forward, in fall camp.
There's 3 things for me that I'm watching, Rod, and they could all show up in the Michigan game one way or the other. Interior defensive line against the run, because Texas is going to have to run more games this year. Right side of the offensive line in pass pro. And can you run the ball in the red zone? All 3 of those are going to be put to the test against Michigan right out of the gate. And you're going to see right where you are and how much improvement you have to make, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I love that. And Obviously, we'll throw in. I don't assume the red zone is going to be an issue, but if it's an issue again, yes, that red zone could be one of those reasons that Texas underachieves next season. Good question there. Scott wants to know. Scott Sturgeon wants to know any big time flip targets. Ooh, who's going to flip?
Yeah, I don't know who this is going to flip, but we know this about Sark. I can tell you who they're not going to stop recruiting. Josiah Sharma, Myron Charles, Zion Williams. I think Brandon Brown, that ship has sailed pretty much. I think they'll go back in and take a look at Derry Norris, committed to Georgia Tech. They won't give up on a Devin Sanchez or Dorian Brew. They'll probably stay in touch with Mattia Tagoib, the linebacker committed to USC. They're not. One thing we know about Sark, they aren't walking away from these guys. They're going to stay in there and battle on these guys and see what happens with some seasons, some situations, the coaching carousel. They're just going to see how things play out. So those are guys that we know Texas is already still in contact with, but will remain in contact with. They're not going away. Who flips right now? That normally comes down to the coaching carousel and being in a position to take advantage of it. And that could be a coach leaving for a better job in his estimation. That could be a coach getting fired. It could be a position coach leaving, what have you. But being in position to jump in the coaching carousel is big. The problem, though, with the coaching carousel is signing day is now December 4th.
Yeah.
That's a big change in the coaching carousel. So colleges, if a Florida job comes open, and they're after Drinkwitz, Lanning, and Kiffin, that could be 2 playoff teams.
Yep.
It's going to be well after signing day. So there's so many things that play into it. So the coaching carousels change, but I think Texas, what they've done a good job of is be in a position to pounce when there are questions in that regard with some targets. So we'll see what happens.
Good stuff, Jerry. I like this. Freelance Society. Hey, what's up, Freelance? I actually got a chance to meet Freelance Society, so appreciate Freelance jumping out there with the super chat. He says, is Ethan Feaster the next great wide receiver? I'm about to watch Argentina versus Colombia, and it might be Messi's last international game. I love football, but he may be the greatest athlete of all time or ever. Wow. So, So there you go. Freelance Society. Thank you very much for the super chat. We appreciate that. Ethan Feaster. Did I get that name right?
Booby Feaster. Yeah, Ethan Booby Feaster, 2027 receiver at DeSoto. Very talented. Kind of got to see how does he continue to get faster as he gets older. You know, the one thing about DeCorian Moore, that dude kept getting faster and faster and faster to the point where he ran 10.45 this year as a junior, and we won't get to see 10.35 because he'll graduate from high school in December. So a lot of this depends on, at a young age, really, really good football player. Obviously, really smooth, has the ability to decelerate and create instant separation there, catches the ball away from his body, can go get the ball in the air in contested situations. Really good football player at a young age. Let's see how his body develops. And as that body develops, does he keep getting faster? I think that's going to tell the story on Booby Feaster, but he's very talented, 30-plus offers at a young age.
Yeah, I saw his first high school game, actually, DeSoto versus Allen last fall. First catch, I mean, catch and run, the ability that he has to just turn the jets on as quickly as he does, very impressive. And hey, Sarkeesian, I think, had a pretty interesting message to him whenever he visited January 20th for the junior day. Julio Jones was the comp that he brought up. So
wow,
worth mentioning there. Of course, we all know how good Julio Jones was. Like, to your point, Jerry, how quickly does that development continue? And how, what does that ceiling look like at the end of the day for Booby Feaster by the time he's ready to enroll in college?
Oh yeah, and man, that's a hell of a comp right there, Julio Jones. All right, let's get back to some of the questions. Hey, we got another super chat here. Thank you very much to Steve. Thank you, Steve, for the super chat. Why weren't we interested in Evan Stewart? I believe he's talking about here. Did he have attitude issues? If so, why is Oregon okay with him? Is that an indictment of recent commits?
Yeah, this was a fun conversation on the board at the time in which he was in the portal, wasn't it? You know, why isn't Texas going after Evan Stewart? Listen, I think the character concerns are completely overblown when it comes to Evan Stewart. I think that there's some talk from A&M, some talk from Texas fans that maybe didn't like the way that his original recruitment went, that kind of sit with them and don't sit right, long term with the way that he is. Evan's a great kid. Every time that I've gotten to talk to him, I don't think Texas wanted to go through another re-recruitment with Evan Stewart in the way that it ended the first time. And I think that was a big part of it. Of course, I think, at one point committing to Texas and then decommitting and then going to A&M, there's some ruffled feathers, I would say. I don't think they wanted to completely dive back in 100% on that one, but the character concerns, not that big of an issue to me.
Hey, Rod, I got something for you. So CJ Baxter, 218 last year, 220 this year. And there's been some talk in the chat about 2 pounds of weight gain. Is that enough? But talk about how a guy's body can change from a strength perspective in a very positive way, but still be only 2, 3, 4 pounds difference.
Yeah. I mean, you just turning a lot of that, what kind of was that, whatever that soft body, whatever it is, teenage body muscle into like armor, as I always call it. Right. So you just kind of, some guys' bodies are just built really differently, and they can add muscle mass and not necessarily gain a lot of weight with it. You'll just see their bodies transform and get more cut. And I think that's probably what happened to him. There's no doubt at running back. I mean, they're considering that, like, his bulk and how much punishment he can take and really the wear and tear overall and how durable he is. So I just think they don't want to add too much to him because they probably think, man, maybe that'll affect how explosive he is, his agility. But trust me, I guarantee if you looked at his body, they don't. I'm sure the coaches have this, right. But we're not privy to it. But if you looked at 2 pictures of him from his freshman year and this picture of him now in his sophomore year, I guarantee you his body's a whole lot more cut and defined. So just that extra 4 or 5 pounds. Yeah, I mean, you probably want to see more, but I guarantee you he's now more equipped to deal with the punishment at running back position because of the armor now that he's put on, and that's part of it. So I guarantee, I saw the young man too when we did third and Longhorns podcast, and he did look like a high school football player still. I mean, there were times when he kind of still looked like that, but you can tell he's got a really impressive frame, long, rangy, broad shoulders, and he could put on a lot of weight, or I think he could just kind of stack that, that mass on top of mass and just have more muscle and definition. And I bet if I see him today, he would be way more defined and cut than he was last season. So I think that's kind of, how I would explain it. I'm sure I did a terrible job. I'm not a strength and conditioning coach, but I bet that's more what it is. And I've seen guys go through a similar transformation. I myself did it too when I was going from my freshman year to really my sophomore and junior years. I was heavier then actually, but I wasn't as cut and defined. It was just weight because I needed to be heavier because I was taking on fullbacks and tight ends and stuff like that. By the time I got to my junior year, man, I was way more cut and it was lighter, but I looked like I actually was heavier than I was my freshman year. In my freshman year, I was heavier. I looked heavier my junior year just because of how much the definition there was. So it's just everybody's body's a little bit differently.
I would add, I don't think Texas wants him to weigh 230 either right now, by the way. And by the way, Rick Ambergy, Jarrett Gibson came with the armor.
Yeah.
Jarrett Gibson was doing 1-arm push-ups at 1.5 years old. That's the mom convinced.
Jerry, were you surprised Christian Clark was listed 5 pounds heavier than Jarrett Gibson?
No, because his lower body is so thick naturally. I saw it at Bergstrom Airport his junior year in June when he left his official visit. He was thicker at calves, thighs, those areas than you think he is. I think watching him on tape. So I'm not. I think he's got a bit of a longer frame, longer arms too. But dude, he is really thick in his lower trunk.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Junk in the trunk. All right, getting back to this. I like this question here from Jason Hernandez. It's a pretty good one. If you had one season where you were given a random mixed roster of the top 500 recruits to play a season where you pick, who do you pick to coach them? Me, Gundy, done the most with the least year after year of any coach. It's a good one. And I got to tell you, the amount of respect that Longhorn fans have for Mike Gundy is actually really, really impressive because Longhorn fans, they don't show a lot of respect to a lot of other coaches and foes. They respect Mike Gundy. We've had like four conversations about Mike Gundy on these live streams since we've transitioned to the SEC. And I think a lot of Longhorn fans are just happy they don't have to see him again. Now they can actually show how much they admire him because they don't have to actually play him year after year. CJ, what are your thoughts? If you get any coach to coach a random mixed roster of top 500 recruits one season, who is it?
That's pretty good. Mike Gundy's a pretty good one. I'm assuming we're taking the coordinators with them and the whole coaching staff. Kyle Whittingham, I think, is a pretty good job at getting, kind of some really, really impressive outbursts from some 3 and unranked star guys, right? That program up at Utah has been tremendous. Kalen DeBoer is a good one.
That was my pick. That was my pick, hands down.
Yeah.
I mean, with what he's done everywhere he's been, Indiana, Washington, we're going to see it this year. Alabama just landed 5-star offensive lineman Ty Haywood out of Denton Ryan today, beat out of Oklahoma. So that's one less 5-star for Bill Bedenbaugh to get to work with in Norman. So
Lance Leopold was what I was going to say too. I was like, what about Lance Leopold, dude? Talking about doing more with less. That's amazing what he's done. No, it's a really good question. And that's no doubt Mike Gundy's probably at the top of everybody's list, man. Mike Gundy is he's a madman, but he's it really, in terms of his football knowledge and him being a ball coach, it's hard to find somebody year after year who does more with less than Gundy. All right, getting back to it, guys. Here, how about this one from my man David Keith Williams, always dropping in some great questions. Says here, Ernest Green has performed a lot better so far than Campbell, but I still think when it's all said and done, Campbell will be viewed as a better offensive lineman. What's your view of them both? Ernest Green, the offensive lineman from Georgia, he's talking about, who's obviously predicted to be an NFL player. They got another. Who's that guard? Is it Tate Ratledge? Is another. I mean, they're loaded. They got like
Fairchild. I mean, like I said, I was told they have 7. 7 guys. They think are going to be 6 to 10 year pros. That means second contract guys, your entire starting line plus 2. Ernest Green, finished second on Ernest Green to Georgia. It was Kyle Flood in Texas, out of Southern California. Kyle Flood evaluates these guys. If he gets to see them in person, he's pretty good at this thing now. What's interesting to me is Cam Williams. I always go back to this story, and it's always stuck with me, Rod. I'm not sure you've heard this story. I think CJ has. So I'm at the Summer Creek Atascocita game when Cam Dewberry's a senior and Kelvin Banks was a senior. Kelvin was committed to Oregon. And Mario Cristobal and his offensive line coach, the little guy walked up. I always forget his name, Alex Mirabal. They walk up and we're talking. We're having a conversation about recruiting in Texas and Houston area. And Cristobal looked at me and said, "Hey, who do you think is going to be better long-term, Kelvin Banks or Cam Williams?" And I don't even think I answered the question, but I was just taken aback. I was like, whoa, that was an interesting question to ask, because that means those guys have had conversations about how good Cam Williams could be one day.
Yeah.
You don't ask that question when Kelvin Banks is on the field, is ranked as a 5-star. If you're not thinking Cam Williams is going to be really damn good one day. So that's always stuck with me, that Cristobal asked that question. I think Cam Williams' upsides is, maybe higher than Green because of the frame, but Ernest Green's a really good player.
Jerry, that's actually a really funny story. I hadn't heard that before because I have a similar story that same year at the Duncanville DeSoto game, watching Cam Williams while committed to Oregon. I talked a little bit with Coach Mirabal and of course about Cam Williams, and he was over the moon that he was in his recruiting class at the time. He's like, yeah, I think this guy's going to be a bona fide stud. I think he's a 3-and-done caliber guy. We'll see how that goes this year, obviously. But to your point, that's hilarious. I mean, you saw Kelvin Banks when they were down there. I saw Cam Williams up here in Dallas. That regardless, those guys know offensive line, and Mirabal's done a tremendous job at all of his stops. I believe he's still at Oregon. He didn't follow. Did he follow?
No, he's at Miami. Mirabal's at
Miami. Okay, because I know he's from the Miami area. So return home. Yeah,
he just can't ride the rides at Disneyland. All right, let's see.
It was very funny seeing him next to Cam Williams after the game, though.
I mean, Miraball's like 5'6",
6'.
170. Rod, he's an offensive line
Wow.
coach. Yeah,
That's crazy.
you broke the pay attention. He was no Banks and Williams are both committed to Oregon at the time. It was when Cristobal was the coach at Oregon before he left to go to Miami. And those guys, Banks and Cam Williams, flipped to Texas.
Man, yeah, that's crazy. All right, getting back to the questions here, guys. Here is one from Tom. How many DBs and safeties are we recruiting at the moment? Tom wants to know.
It's a good question. So you have at safety Nathan Tillman out of Mansfield Timberview, who we think will announce a decision this week. Texas or Utah. TCU's the third. Will he stay close to home, close to his parents, like he originally was going to do when he committed to SMU, or does he want to this go around want to try to get away and go up to Salt Lake City? We'll see where that goes. Corner, obviously Texas has Cade Phillips and Caleb Chester in the boat. Corner, Aiden Anding. We're waiting to see if he cancels that LSU visit that's scheduled for late July. If he does, a Texas-Arkansas, maybe Miami decision will come pretty quick in the next week to 10 days probably. So we'll see what he does with this LSU visit. You know, LSU's fighting to get him to take that visit, even though he's thinking about potentially canceling that visit. And then look at corner. I think Texas is going to stay on some guys. I think they're going to stay in there. They're going to evaluate some senior year guys, but they're going to stay in the fight on some of these guys. You know, they'll keep calling Devin Sanchez, see what happens. Dorian Brew, they'll still be hanging around the rim on some guys, and kind of see what happens as the season moves along. Could they go back in on a Tristan Castro senior year? Will they find somebody they really like senior year? Out of state, not out of the question.
All right, thanks, Jerry. Another question here from Joey Fletch. What's your take on Hines? Do you see him better than Johnson or Lockett? So we're talking about the receivers here. CJ, your thoughts?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I really like Tanook Hines' hands. I think he's a very natural pass catcher. I think there's still some refinement in terms of his routes and the tree in which that you would expect a college level wide receiver to have. I think that there's more explosivity and home run ability with Kelshawn. I know they both have like 10.3, 10.4 speed. So the speed is equivalent. I think there's just more natural football moves with Kelshawn, even with that athleticism still, you know, with plenty of room to go before it maximizes. Lockett, the top speed isn't there, but the catchability, the big playability, I think he's a little bit more refined as a route runner as well than both of these guys at the moment. I think he's just a little bit behind on both of them in terms of the overall scheme of being a wide receiver.
You know, what's interesting about Tanook Hines is a lot of colleges see him as a safety too, which is very interesting. They're recruiting him at wide receiver, but they could also see him playing safety. Kelshawn Johnson's twitched up. He is super twitched up. Short space quickness out the kazoo, dude. This dude's really quick laterally. So it'll be interesting to see Khalil Lockett. One thing's going to be interesting with Khalil Lockett, which I think is going to kind of determine his long-term draft future. Look, Rod, he has 11-inch hands. I've never seen a 6'2" receiver with 11-inch hands. I mean, like he could just put move your head, right? Got really good timing, ball skills, really go get 50-50 balls. How is he going to get faster as he gets bigger? And a lot of guys do, but that's going to be huge for him. I kind of liken him to Jalen Polk with a longer wingspan. Jalen Polk ended up going, second round? Wasn't as highly recruited out of Lufkin High as Khalil Lockett is, but I think there's some similarities there. Jalen Polk was a 4.52, 4.55 guy after he developed. I think Khalil Lockett could be in that range, but with a little bit bigger frame, longer wingspan. So, but he's got elite ball skills and body control.
Good stuff. We got two questions here related to wide receiver, I believe. Jameson Washington wants to know who will break the circle of trust offensively and defensively. Offensively, when I talk about circle of trust, I'm talking about the wide receivers.
Yep.
I think they're five ultimately. I think it's Bond, Bolden, Golden in there. I think Jonte Cook's in there, and I think it's going to be impossible to keep Ryan Wingo off the field. Matter of fact, I know Sark. I think Sark wants to put Ryan Wingo out there on the field. Not only because he's an extremely extraordinary talent, extremely gifted, but also because I think he wants to start to continue that pipeline of young wide receivers playing early, producing early, like not as much as Xavier Worthy, obviously, because then that guy was, one of the most productive wide receivers in the country as a true freshman. But I do think he wants to keep the pipeline going so young wide receivers recruiting can see, oh, if you are talented enough and you go to Texas, you play as a young freshman wide receiver. So I think you got 5 guys. I would love to think DeAndre Moore is going to crack that circle of trust, but I don't know if Sark's going to get to 6 in a rotation of wide receiver. That's a lot. That's a lot. And Sark's never really been one to have a really, really deep, expanded rotation of wide receivers. He likes that circle of trust pretty tight. I do think he expands it more than he's ever had here at Texas, but I think it gets to 5.
Yeah, we talk about that Jordan Whittington role, and not so much for me as to who's going to fill that up. Obviously, you have plenty of weapons, plenty of options right now. Not so much in the underneath, kind of the 3rd and 7 or 8 category. Who's going to be that go-to, sure-handed guy? But who's going to be your lead blocker on those quick screens, on those bubbles, on those missiles and jailbreak screens? Sarkeesian loves those.
Yeah,
and last year was always Jordan Whittington who was out there leading the way for Xavier Worthy, because we knew it took A.D. Mitchell quite a while to really want to block, right? That was a big kind of red flag early on, as that play probably could have gone for about 12 to 15 more yards if you saw that extra effort from A.D. Mitchell. You knew what you had with Jordan Whittington in that regard. Who's that guy this year? I lean towards Matthew Golden, and right behind him, I think it's DeAndre Moore. So that's one way I think that you see DeAndre Moore crack that circle of trust, is by doing the little things right there. Because again, to your point, Rod, there's just so many playmakers in that room at the moment. The high level explosivity, maybe not DeAndre Moore's game, but we saw Jordan Whittington make some big-time plays down the field as a result of always being on the field with what he did via the little things.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Good point. Rick wants to know who ends up being the first 3 wide receivers on the official depth chart.
Oh.
That's tough, because to me, this is the same, I think, conversation when we having that defensive end, right, about the edge position. Right? Who starts? I don't know if who starts the games or who's finishing the game. I think it's kind of like you might end up in the edge position being something kind of like you see in NBA rotations, right? There are starters, and then there are your finishers. All right. And that the starters and the finishers are not necessarily the same guys when you watch NBA games. Sometimes the guys that close out the games are different. Yeah. I think Texas edge position could be that, because I don't necessarily see. Do we see is Trey Moore going to start over Barron Terrell or Ethan Burke? I mean, he's considered one of your better players. Does he usurp them immediately, or is in the rotation toward the end of games, is he more the guys that ends up being more your closer than your finisher more than the starter? I actually don't know. I'm asking. I'm curious about that. I want to say wide receiver might be the same thing, where you get you got some starters, but I wonder if those are also the guys that are going to finish the game. That's more likely than on defense with the edge position.
I think wide receiver, the game up at Michigan experience is going to matter a lot. So Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, Jonte Cook, Silas Bolden, experience in games is going to matter a lot. And Jonte doesn't have as much as the other guys. That's not to say Ryan Wingo, DeAndre Moore, those guys won't get on the field. But I do think when you go up in that environment, experience is going to matter. I think the second half of the season, the wide receiver rotation is going to look totally different than the first half of the season. Because I think Ryan Wingo, as the season moves along, is going to be impossible to keep off the field. Yeah. It's just my belief. Hey, by the way, one other thing with the roster, Amari Niblack listed at 6'4", 245. Let's say he's 6'3", 245. He looked good when we walked by him after the spring game in April. I mean, that is a dude, Rod Babers, is going to be running 4.5 something at 245. He can pick him up and put him down at 245.
Yeah, that's what they need. They need to put some weight on him so that when he's out there and they need him to block, that he's just not roadkill. All right, that you know what I mean. So because they're not so predictable. The whole point is, and CJ, we've talked about this. You know, Gunnar Helm on the field. At least you have more balance in the offense. He can block. He can run routes, but he's not just a guy that's going to beat man coverage consistently. Amari Niblack will beat man coverage consistently, especially with a linebacker or a safety. What you can't necessarily depend on him consistently doing is being able to block for you in the running game, but adding some weight to him and really how they, utilize him in the run game as a blocker, I think it's going to make a huge difference. So they're not so predictable But Sark wants a guy like Nye Black. Remember, he thought Jaleel Billingsley was going to be kind of like that. Remember, that was the same kind of guy that could stretch the field, that tight end. And even JT Sanders, as great as he was, he didn't necessarily stretch the field. Amari Napa is going to add a different dynamic to that offense. So I like that too. All right, getting back to the questions here. Doug wants to know, Doug Haywood, any update on DJ Sanders? Any announcement coming soon?
Look, DJ's a ghost in recruiting, so he doesn't do interviews. He's not really on social media. We've been hearing it could be early July, mid-July, late July. You just have to kind of wait for him to make his decision and announce his decision. He could be a guy that just puts something out that's done, right? I mean, you just don't know with him. I think Texas has felt pretty good about it. I think at times A&M's felt okay about it when they've pushed hard for him. And then Michigan's the third team in it. But as far as when he's going to decide, I think the schools recruiting him keep expecting this to happen, and it hasn't happened yet. He's on his own timeline, that's for sure.
All right. We got a super chat here. Neil on Wheels. Appreciate you, Neil on Wheels. Thank you very much for the super chat. Hey, guys, if Texas was still in the Big 12, what would be their record? Will the lack of competition hurt the team in the playoff? I think in this year's Big 12, like an expanded new Big 12, man, they got a real good chance to go undefeated in this Big 12. Yeah. I mean, they really would have.
Say the U word there, Rod. Go ahead and say it.
They got it. They would have a chance. But they got the Michigan game. They'd have the non-conference game, whatever the big game. But in this Big 12, they would have a shot at it just because of really how good this team is. The multiple veteran quarterback you got returning, the offensive line for the 5 starters returning. So, and in Oklahoma, they're the other power, but they got so much turnover at the top. Coordinators, your quarterback, your offensive line. That's just a lot of turnover for them. So, I'm not gonna say undefeated. I'd say they go 11-1. It's hard to go undefeated, guys. It really is. Like, it just doesn't happen a lot, But
hey, let's play a fun game. Let's read Colorado's schedule. And if Texas had Colorado's schedule, what would it be? North Dakota State, instead of at Nebraska, you're at Michigan. Then they have Colorado State, so that one remains. But the Big 12 schedule, Baylor, at UCF, off, Kansas State, at Arizona, Cincinnati, off, at Texas Tech, Utah, at Kansas, Oklahoma State. So they don't have OU. So you'd have to replace, let's say, at Arizona is replaced with Oklahoma. So you have Baylor, at UCF, Kansas State, OU, Cincinnati, at Tech, Utah, at Kansas, Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State is the one that worries you, I guess. Right? And
I mean, that's 4 tough games in a row to end the season. I don't care what league you're in.
Yeah, I mean,
Kansas, Oklahoma State. Now, you don't know if Jalen Daniels is going to play football by the end of the year or not, but
Cam Rising either. for that matter, Cam Rising. Yeah,
Cam can come back next year.
Tech would be out for revenge in Lubbock this year after 57-7, and that demoralizing loss.
That is a tough back half. That final stretch. Whew.
That could be a nice rivalry game, though, between Colorado and Oklahoma State, though, considering Deion and Mike Gundy and how different they are. Programs built very different. One guy loves the transfer portal, loves NIL, very flashy. Mike Gundy, in his own way, very outspoken, but anti-portal, anti-NIL. That would be interesting. But, yeah, no, I'm with you. I think Texas, if they were in the Big 12, of course, they would kill it. And that it wouldn't hurt their playoff chances. Texas, being a double-digit win team, will always be a playoff favorite in any conference. Doesn't matter where it is, SEC or Big 12. Just the power of the brand. Thank you for the question, though. We appreciate that. All right, how about this one? Okay, cool. Hook'em then wants to know who won, Quinn or Ocho Cinco. I didn't know. CJ, did you watch the sample games that were available?
I didn't watch any. I was on the road up today, coming up to Dallas. I did see a little snippet. Quinn was up 28-7, and it sounded like him.
There you go.
He had a nice little connection to Silas Bond in the game. So, what does that mean for the game, for the fall and the season itself? Who knows? But I think he beat Ocho Cinco pretty easily. Which he's probably lucky it wasn't FIFA, because I think Ocho throws down some serious cash when it comes to playing FIFA.
Slick Rick wants to know, Jerry, who's the most important recruit in this class, in your opinion? Who's the linchpin of this class?
I It's a good question. That's a really good question. Right now, I'm not sure there is that guy who's left. I mean, obviously, you don't want to lose Fasusi to Oklahoma. DFW, highly ranked player, ranked as a 5-star player. See what happens there. He's announcing August 21st, so that's a ways off, by the way. Look, some people would say after the Corian Moore went to Oregon, Jamie French is that guy because Texas has been leading for a while. He's in Jacksonville, Florida. You've held off Miami. You've held off Tennessee. You've held off LSU. Now he's probably going to visit Georgia the last weekend in July. Some people might say Jamie French because there's 0 wide receivers committed right now. So he might be the answer for a lot of people.
That's where I was going to go.
Yep, I like that. I felt like it would be one of those wide receivers, right? It just felt like if it wasn't going to be DeCorian Moore, then maybe it falls to.
Well, they're flashy and they're high ranked. I think it's easy to look at them and say, you have a really good playmaker right there. Build around them. Obviously, there's 13 kids in the class at the moment, so you can't build around them. But you can certainly look at this class and say, "Yep, that makes sense." Sarkeesian's got himself another one. It obviously was DeCorian Moore. Right now, I think it's got to be Jamie French.
But I'll say the crazy thing about recruiting right now is I think after senior year, it won't surprise me if Lance Jackson's not a 5-star recruit. It wouldn't surprise Smith or Ogbo's starting to be ranked up in that area code.
Yeah.
So, I mean, see what happens as far as how these rankings play out a little bit too. Because I think that's not the question exactly, but when we're always talking about recruiting rankings and players and decisions guys make, Texas has a couple of guys that are going to be knocking on that door senior year, and they might end up with 3 or 4 of those guys in this class. We'll see soon.
All right, before we get ready to wrap things up, I know CJ wants to give you guys a couple of baseball nuggets before we end the live stream today. CJ, you want to hook the folks up with a couple of nuggets about Texas baseball?
Yeah. The MLB draft is going on right now. As y'all know, Texas is working to get a couple guys back onto campus. Jalen Flores, Jared Thomas. Those are the 2 big ones that kind of fill out that 2025 infield as well. A couple of 2024 signees and commits expected to hear their names. 2 already have, and I'll dive into that. The first 18 picks, Texas saw 2 commits hear their names. The first was Bryce Rayner, was picked 11th by the Detroit Tigers. He's out of Harvard Westlake out in California. I would say it's very unlikely with a $5.7 million value slot there that he makes it to campus. The other one just went number 18 to the Tampa Bay Rays. That's Theo Gillen out of Austin Westlake, outfielder right there. I actually tweeted offensive line. So whoops. I see the comment there, Georgetown Eagles. So hand up on that one, OF and OL. Not really close on the keyboard, but my mind goes to one over the other pretty often. Regardless, we'll see where Jared Thomas and Jalen Flores go because those are the 2 big names Texas fans are waiting on at the moment. If you're able to get them back on the campus, you have a heck of a lineup for 2025. But at this point, we'll see, of course, where their name is called and what that slot is for them value-wise.
All right, thank you for the update, CJ. Before we get out of here, we'll take like 2 more questions, but we got to give one more shout out to our fantastic sponsor, Joe Brown. So, Jared, would you tell the folks about Joe Brown, the veteran mortgage pro?
I sure can do that. Joe Brown, like the recruiting business, the mortgage industry has a 5-star rating system, and Joe Brown is that guy, 5 stars. He has more than 3 decades of experience helping over 4,000 families to finance homes and investment properties. Joe's a lifetime Longhorn fan with 2 degrees from the University of Texas and helped many former UT athletes and UT professors with their real estate financing. And Southside Bank has been based in Texas for more than 60 years, but can also do mortgage loans in most other states, something to keep in mind. So give Joe Brown a call at 512-663-4744 if you're looking for a mortgage or loan. Again, that's 512-663-4744. Bobby Burton endorses Joe Brown. Joe Brown was the first mortgage for Bobby Burton.
All right. Thank you for the message there, Jerry. And thank you to Joe Brown for sponsoring our Sunday night live stream. All right. 2 more questions here. John Adams first. Is Texas done at tight end recruiting if Townsen commits tomorrow?
Yes, if Nick Townsen goes Texas way tomorrow, Texas A&M, Alabama, USC, those are the final four. If that goes Texas way, yes, I would think so. If Nick Townsend and Amari Winston are in the same class, yeah. Now, if Texas beat out Oregon for Michael Terry, what does he play in the future? That's to be determined down the line.
That would be interesting. I would like that. All right. That's a good conversation to have. First world problems. Ryan Nelson, last question of the live stream, wants to know, Jerry and CJ, do we need to have more offers at D tackle in the future? SEC country is a different animal. You are in the big leagues now.
Got to cast a wider net. Cast a wider net. I think you got to bring in 9, 10, 11 guys for official visits in the future to get 3 or 4.
Yeah. Hey, they aimed high. They just fell a little bit flat. Real quick, Easton, that news did happen. That was Drew Rarick, the 2024 pitcher, who is the number 240 prospect in this MLB draft this year. Flipped from A&M to Texas, throws about 96. So pretty good get there.
All right. Sorry, there are a couple of questions we didn't get to. Please, folks, just throw them to the Coffee and Football crew tomorrow morning, starting at 8 a.m. And it's going to be, trust me, one of the best shows because the guys are live from SEC Media Days. So that's going to be great. And also, we'll have the winning drive as well, around 4:15. We'll have updates about SEC Media Days. Also, you got the Nick Townsend announcement tomorrow, commitment tomorrow. That'll be around 4 p.m. So on Texas Football, we have you covered there as well. That'll basically bleed over into the winning drive. So we'll have a lot of coverage about the Nick Townsend commitment as well. So don't go anywhere with that. Thank you, Matthew, for everything you do behind the scenes. Matthew's a real MVP. Thank you to Jerry for all of his knowledge. Thank you to CJ as well for all of the nuggets. Thank you all for the super chats. Really appreciate you guys for helping us build this community, the On Texas Football family. And also thank you to Joe Brown for sponsoring our Sunday live stream. And join us tomorrow on Texas Football channel for Coffee and Football and the winning drive. And until next time, hook 'em home.